Hello and welcome to Educated STEM. I am Kate, the founder of Educated STEM, and today we're going to continue with my series on how to be successful in graduate school. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you find my content helpful. Now we're going to discuss what's probably one of the most exciting parts about your graduate school experience, and that is the rotations. So first off, how many do you have? When do they start and end? How long are they? And do you have a list of potential mentors already? And have you already reached out to them to discuss potentially doing rotations in their lab? So the first thing I want you to think about was when you applied to this program, you wrote essays about why you want to go to it, and you probably wrote a list of potential people that you want to work with. So find those essays and those lists that you had. And the first thing is, do you still want to work with them? Are you still interested in working with them? Or are there other people that you want to consider? And I want to just explain why it's so important that you take the time to consider these mentors, because going through your graduate school experience, performing the research, you are going to be working with these people a lot, and therefore you need to have a good relationship with them. If you've heard that they are cruel or they might not have your best interests at heart, then you want to think about how you interact with them, because some people don't gel with them, whereas you might. So you also want to take the things that you hear with a pinch of salt, but also trust your gut. You know, if you meet with someone and your tummy is like, you just feel uncomfortable, maybe you don't feel that you could confide in them if you're having any issues, then maybe they're not the mentor for you. Because you want a mentor, you want that special relationship with someone. You do not want someone who is going to be a tormentor and is not going to be helpful in your graduate school research experience. So I have a video on this, which I will link here, and also a document that you can download again on my Patreon page, which will again cost you a whole $3 for the price of a cup of coffee. You can see my suggestions for how you select a mentor. But really there are three elements: your desire to do the research, your potential relationship with a mentor, and whether you like the feel for the lab, so the people who work there, how it operates, where the lab is, how it's set up, things like that. And so if each of these, meets your expectations, then you are potentially on the way to selecting your mentor. So now hopefully you've got your list that you suggested in your essays, that these are people that you want to work with. But you're going to continue to add to this list. It's better to have a nice long list, go and meet with all the different people and remove people from it as you decide that either you're not gelling with them, their research actually isn't as interesting as you thought, or for whatever reason, the lab just doesn't seem to be a good fit for you. Rather than only having a couple of people going to those rotations and finding out that actually you don't like it, and then you have to go back and find more mentors to potentially consider. So don't worry if you have a really long list. That's better than coming in with only a couple of options. And hopefully you might meet these people in various orientation events, and so you get to see them kind of in the wild. What are they like? Do people go up and happily talk to them? Are they interacting with people of all different levels, so professors, graduate students, postdocs, or are they just kind of secluded away with either their own group or the professors? Do they introduce themselves as, hi, I am Kate? Or are they, hello, I am Dr. Sleeth? That might give you an indication of what they might be like to work with. Are they approachable? Do you feel comfortable whilst you're having the conversation with them? Because if you don't feel comfortable at just a general, let's get to know each other, have a 5-10 minute conversation, then you're probably not going to be comfortable later on, in a more for a longer period of time in a lab. So if there is someone that you're interested in, maybe in the orientation event, you could just say, oh, by the way, I'd be very interested to learn more about potentially rotating in your lab. Do you have the availability to meet with me at a later time? Or they might just say, oh, fantastic, I have these projects in mind. Do any of those tickle your fancy? And that would be fantastic. But definitely reach out to them afterwards and say, I met you at this event. We had a quick chat. I would love to meet with you more to learn more about the projects. And then you'll be in a better position to see whether you're actually going to choose them. If you don't meet potential mentors or someone that you're interested in at the orientation events, just email them and say, you're a brand new graduate student in school and you would love to potentially rotate in the lab. Can you arrange a time to go and meet with them to discuss various projects and whether they have the ability to take you? You might also meet people who are teaching you that you've never even considered. This is definitely relevant later on in the year when you've gone through some courses, and you can add those to your list as well. So, a nice large list is good, and then as you meet them, you can decide if they're a potential or not. If they are teaching you, you might want to really consider how they're teaching you. Does their style suit you? Are they, polite and courteous? Are they a bit snooty? Are they very helpful? Do they respond to emails quickly? That sort of thing, because that will probably tell you a lot about what they're like if you go and work for them in their lab. If they're not impressing you as a professor who teaches you, do you really want to go and potentially learn from them in person? Maybe not. And if someone doesn't respond to you, then that tells you all you need to know. It might just be that they're super busy, or they might not have the bandwidth to take a student. Maybe send them a second email, a week later and say, by the way, I'm still interested in potentially meeting with you. Do you have the availability? If they ignore that, then just leave it alone. They probably are not interested in having a graduate student at this point in time for whatever reason. Now, when you have the meeting with a potential mentor, you're going to be paying attention to a few different things. And you might want to take some notes so that you can go back and remind yourself what happened, especially if you're having multiple meetings. Some of the projects, some of the things might melt into kind of a confusing, is this person 1 or 2? So make some notes. So the first thing, are you interested in the projects that they're offering you? And if one of those projects is successful, is that something that you might continue on as your PhD research topic? Because that would be lovely if you kind of do a small project which will then kind of launch into something more later on. If it isn't, then what are the other potential kind of longer term projects that they're considering? Or are they expecting you to then potentially come up with a project that you want to do for the duration of your PhD? How are you feeling about the mentor? Are you comfortable? Do they show you around their lab and introduce you to their lab members? And how do they kind of respond to you at the time? Are they friendly? Are they super busy, and do they look stressed? That sort of thing. Will someone be a primary point of contact in the lab who you can go to for assistance, maybe a postdoc or the lab manager, something like that? Have you met them? Do you feel comfortable with them? Are they approachable? Key thing for me is if your research from your small project is going to be published in some way, will your name actually appear on that publication? I've had some very disastrous moments where someone has basically repeating an experiment that they could previously do. They're not actually learning anything in this rotation, but they were told, absolutely, this is going to be published and your name will be on it. And that later they weren't included on the paper. And, the mentor or professor kind of went, oh, I didn't say that. You're wrong. But the student wouldn't have just blindly repeated the same thing that they'd previously done. They're not learning anything. That rotation was essentially a waste of time. And that indicates why that particular student did not opt to go to that mentor's lab in the end. So this is a good thing about, whether they are going to publish with your name on it. So once you've had a few meetings with potential mentors, let's start ranking them. Who is the top person that you really want to work with, all the way to, can we just completely remove people from our list? These people, they might not suck, but they're not the mentor for you. Can you remove them? So start the ranking list. You might also want to consider any training that you might need prior to a rotation. So for instance, you might want to work in a lab which does any kind of animal research or research involving humans. You will need, training for both of those things. Maybe it's a radioactive lab, something like that. So you may not be able to get the training before you want to start working. You might need to strategically think about, okay, I can get this training in this month, if it's offered then, or if they kind of have a rolling thing. And then you can kind of say, okay, I want to do this rotation with this lab, with this mentor, but it needs to come second or third because I need to have this training. Now, it is likely that once you have decided on which mentors you're interested in, that you are going to have to give a list to your program or the administration office, whomever it is. And they're probably going to ask you for maybe 3 or 4 names, because your cohort may also want to work with the same people. And so you need a few different options, because you might not get your first choice for the first rotation, or you might be lucky and you will. And so usually what happens, or at least what I did as an administrator who did this, was I saw who the students wanted to work with. I actually wrote them down in a particular order. Then the professors, have they reached out to me to say, I would like to work with this student for the rotation? And some professors send very explicit details. I want to work, I've already decided who I want my rotations to be. I want this student first, this student second, this student third. And then, if the professors told me who they want and the student has also indicated that they want to work with them, then, that's a match and I don't have to do anything else. So if you particularly want to work in a lab and the mentor agrees with you, then ask them to email the office and make sure that the administrator knows that you have already kind of come to an agreement, because that takes the thought out of it for them. It might also be that, multiple students, if a lab is large enough, could rotate in the same lab. So that might also be an option, but you won't know. The administrator who's kind of assigning you to where you are going to be will kind of figure that out with the mentor. So the next thing is, before you finish your first rotation, you'll be asked again who you want for your second rotation. So this will just repeat for the second and the third. So you're going to give them a list, they're going to match them up. And hopefully by the time you've finished those 3 rotations, you will have decided who your forever mentor will be. And hopefully the mentor also wants you to work with them. Sometimes it's a little awkward and a student feels that they've really gelled with someone and the mentor doesn't feel the same. So before you leave the lab, you want to go and have a conversation with the mentor and express, I think this went fabulously. I would love to potentially work with you as my proper research project. Do you have the ability to accept me? And sometimes it's not possible because maybe the mentor doesn't have the funding, Maybe they have too many students and they just feel kind of stretched across the board. Whatever it is, they might have a very good reason for not accepting you. Or they might just say, I just don't feel that I would be a good fit for you as a mentor, which is also very valid. So have that conversation. Don't get blindsided at the end when you think that, you've had this amazing experience and everything's aligned, and then you find out that the lab or the mentor doesn't feel the same way. Now, if you've decided after your first or your second rotation that one of those two labs is going to be your forever lab, then you are in a unique experience and you can choose your third lab to learn a new technique, or kind of, you're very interested in this particular topic. You probably don't want to do it full time, but for a 6 to 8 week period or however long your rotation is, then you would love to kind of dip your toes in. And this is a gift. I always think this is fantastic, that you get a wild card and you get to go off and learn something completely new. But don't be surprised if after that experience, you find that you're interested in the wild card, because so many students I've had, say, I really want to have this experience. And then they have to go back and tell their original person who they thought they were going with, actually, I really enjoyed the wild card and I'm going to be doing my dissertation research with this other person instead. So, if you have the gift of choosing something just because you can, then enjoy it. But don't be surprised if that actually ends up being where you want to go. I've seen it happen more often than not, and it's really kind of funny to watch, and they've always worked out really well in the end. Now, something to consider is you'll be taking classes during and around your rotations, and so it's important to manage your time wisely. You absolutely need to go to class, you need to finish your assignments, you need to take your exams, but you also need to do some sort of research. That means you're going to be, reading the literature, doing some actual experiments in the lab. You're probably going to have to write a document at the end, which kind of explains what your project is, and you might even need to give a small oral presentation. And all of those things will come together, and your mentor or the professor will have to write a document which is given into the graduate school, where they review your time in the lab. So, were they impressed with you? What research did you get done? Did you make enough progress? Or did they think that you had a successful lab rotation? Were there any issues? Things like that. So just bear that in mind. Yes, you get to go into a lab, but you are also going to be judged during it. You need to be able to check off all of those rotations that you've successfully completed them. Hopefully you have impressed all of the professors, and you are in a good position to select one of them as your kind of dissertation mentor. So now, hopefully, you're in a position to make your list of people, go and meet with them, figure out who you want, and keep reviewing them as you meet new people at different events, or if they teach you in classes and you think, oh, this person's fantastic, add them to the list and just keep reviewing it, because you never know, you might think that you want to go in this route, but during your courses or your training, something happens and you make a little detour, and that's fine. You have to do research that interests you, and your research interests might change. So hopefully you found some research that you're interested in, a mentor that you think that you can gel with, and a lab which has a lab vibe that you enjoy. So good luck with your rotations. I wish you all the success, and come back next time to see the next video, which is going to be on looking after your mental health during your graduate studies. So again, like and subscribe, and thank you for joining me today. Thank you. Bye-bye.